Well, as we inch closer and closer to November's midterm elections, there's a lot of attention on approval ratings in those of office, especially President Biden. High Point University is out with a new poll taking North Carolina's temperatures on the president, Governor Cooper, and much more. And joining us now for more on the results is Martin Kifer, director of High Point University's Survey Research Center. It's good to see you. Welcome back to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
It might be the first time in studio.
I think this is the first time I've visited you in the studio, because we can do it remotely, from High Point and Greensboro, and so that's often what I've done. So thanks for welcoming me here.
Yes, we're glad to have you. Okay, so approval ratings, we hear about these a lot. There's all this talk about Joe Biden's way down. Is that what we found here too?
Yeah, we've been finding that the president is relatively low in terms of the approval ratings here in North Carolina, and that gives us a good comparison point for some of the other people that we look at, and other institutions for that matter.
So where are we? Where are his ratings roughly?
We've found him with what we call, self-identified registered voters in mid to upper 30s, and then with the entire, public here in North Carolina, maybe low to mid 30s. So, we've seen that before with previous presidents. When we first started polling, Barack Obama was president. And then, we were polling, Donald Trump, and now Joe Biden. So we've seen that with a lot of the, at different parts of, sort of president's time in office.
And challenges with the economy, those things tend those are the folks that get blamed. So that's why we see those numbers a lot, right?
That's right. Well, we see it a lot with executives, right? That, people have a view of a governor or they have a view of the president. And so they get judged on what's going on with the economy and sometimes on issues, other issues.
All right, so the governor, on the other hand, his numbers have remained, while they've gone down some, I think, they're relatively up there still, right? Or at least middle of the range at worst.
I think that's right. One of the things that we've seen with Governor Cooper is that his approval rating has been, somewhere in 8, 10, 12 points higher than President Biden's. And that's not out of the ordinary. And again, he's an executive, so most people have a view of his performance. And we don't see that sometimes with other statewide officials like senators or, people within the Council of State.
His numbers have maintained relatively stable, though, despite massive things going on in the country, right? I mean, relative.
Yeah, that's right, in the state, right? I mean, we would expect that a lot more of what people are using to evaluate the governor is stuff that's here in North Carolina. There are some national things that are going to impact people, institutions. I keep saying institutions, we look at Congress generally and stuff like that. But, there are national things that can impact them. But we think with governors, they're going to be evaluated on some different things than, say, the president is.
All right, so one of the other things I was fascinated about was this sort of a favorability ratings that you guys did. And it was a wide range of things that you asked about, right? Not just even people, right?
Right, that's right. Well, we started asking about countries, right? And this is something last couple of cycles that we've done, because we've done some foreign policy things with the conflict going on in Ukraine, China being such a part of how we think about things here in North Carolina as well as at the national level, right? And so we have asked about some countries. But then we ask about people who are in office, but also out of office, because it's tough to say. It's like, well, how well do you think this person's doing their job if they're not an elected official or somebody is appointed here? And so the favorability rating is a different way of getting at how people are feeling about that person.
So it's kind of whether they like them or not, and to put it in real simple terms, right?
Yeah, exactly, right. We say, do you have a favorable view of this person or not?
So what stood out to you? The governor, for instance, at 49, favorable, Israel at 47, Donald Trump at 43, the Supreme Court at 41, Congress at 26. Does any of that surprise you or stand out or not?
Not really. One of the things that's interesting often to me, too, is to look at the FAR column when people are unsure or say that they don't feel like they've got enough information to rate people. Congress always has trouble, right? Often our members of Congress are rated more highly than Congress in general, right? And the president, as we were talking about the relatively low rating for President Biden, the president always runs ahead of Congress as a whole. But we may have individual members, or we have the senators who are above Congress as an institution. So that's one of the things that we look at. And then also too, like I said, with executives, often you'll find that column is smaller. There are fewer people who won't offer, any sort of judgment. But when we get to U.S. senators, often there's a third of people who just don't feel like they have enough information, and that seems to affect their overall favorability rating. It's not necessarily it's so negative, it's that people just didn't form a view or they're not hearing enough.
One other interesting name on there, Mark Robinson. We'll get to that. We get to take a quick break.
Right.
But fascinating numbers on that. He has been a lightning rod in this state. Plus, consumer confidence. We'll talk about that when we return here on Capitol tonight. Stay with us.